Good evening, everyone. This is Kia, and you're with me tonight with Questions with the Queen. But as you can clearly see, it is a special edition, and it is an NXT Takeover Countdown. Now, mind you, all of these that I'm about to do, 5 through 1, will be an NXT Takeover. And yes, if you're asking, I've been to pretty much all of them. And if I haven't, then I've seen them on TV, so I might as well say I've been there. So I want to go ahead and give a quick shout out to two people. My husband, who is the cameraman.
What's up?
And he's also the question man when I decide to throw it back to the basics and do questions. Two, my other person is Kimber Laskick. I know she's gotten a lot of things going on, but I want to take the time to show you the math that she is willing to do. I know some of them are 8, some of them are 10, and some of them are 12. As you can see, it has a theme. If you look closely,
you'll have to bring it to the camera.
If you look closely, this is an Io Shirai one that she did for me, which was very nice because I think it's like one of 2. And my other one, right quick, is NXT, but it's the main, it's like the women, all of the women, such as Mia, Tegan, Shotzi, you know. So with that being said, I wanted to thank Kim, and if you want one, which you should get, you should get one, then go ahead and look her up on Etsy. I will leave the information in the comments when I post this video. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and get into like my 5 favorite matches of TakeOver. So number 5, with that being said, it was in your house, and it was the women's match. And it was the main event, obviously, which to me I thought was a good thing, where you had Flair, Io, and Rhea all competing for one title, the one that Charlotte was holding, the women's NXT. A lot of back and forth, a lot of trash talk. The video package was excellent. You clearly could see the passion that these ladies had. You clearly could see that they were gunning for it. Rhea, most definitely, because she was kind of, I feel like she was kind of robbed at WrestleMania. Io had been wanting to get her hands on Charlotte and Rhea for the longest, so that made her a very threatening competitor. And then Charlotte, who is who she is, the Queen, wanted to compete because she is just superior in that fashion. So, a lot of back and forth. But the thing that got me was the fact that Io literally got on top of the physical house and jumped off. That is what shocked me out of the whole entire thing. There was nothing you could say about that. But, Charlotte ended up putting Rhea into a figure 4, if I have it correctly, and the figure 8, if I have it correctly. And then on top of that, while she was trying to do that to make Rhea submit, Io comes in, does a moonsault from the top rope, and literally lands, gets the pin, and is the one who's getting to hold the title. So that for me is my number 5 match.
While she's writing that down, taking notes, something she didn't mention is that this countdown is for TakeOver, but it's only for main event matches, defined as the final match that took place in that particular one. So for those of you holding out for the first Bayley-Sasha match to appear on this list, it will not, because that actually did not main event that particular one. But I would agree that this definitely needs to be on the list. The appeal of having Charlotte Flair in the match, you know, speaks for itself, especially with her stepping in as the NXT Women's Champion. And it was the perfect setup to build up not just, you know, Rhea as a main event competitor, but also the perfect opportunity to display Io with her good high-flying abilities. And so far, she's won the title, still holds the title, defends it this Saturday at TakeOver 30 against Dakota Kai. So we'll see if she can continue her run. Let's move to 4.
Okay, so my number 4 match is the one that was in Dallas. It was, if I have it correctly, if I remember correctly, because I'm getting old and my mind's kind of being lost, I think it is Balor versus Samoa Joe. If I'm incorrect, go back and you can correct me in the comments. But it was a lot of back and forth. I know it was a lot of trash talk between the two. I know somewhere in the match, I think Finn split Joe open, so Joe was kind of bleeding. And all you could hear from the crowd was, you know, PG sucks and, you know, FPG and so forth and so on. Oh, bleed, Joe, bleed. And with that being said, I felt like it was more of I felt like it was a, what is it? ECW type feel, more or less, with the blood and the gore and everything and having people scream in the background. But what you saw is to have Finn, I believe, retain, he end up using the ring ropes to pin Samoa Joe into a bridge, which had Samoa Joe tapping out. For me, that held a lot of like grit and whatnot for both, because I love both. So that, people, is my number 4.
A lot of the crowd ended up getting taken out of this match. We attended this match live in Dallas. A lot of the crowd had been taken out of it because just minutes before this match was when Asuka had submitted Bayley to win the NXT women's title. But, you know, I agree, this did have a very ECW-esque feel with Samoa Joe getting busted open, and it really let the crowd get back into it. I think it kind of goes under the radar because of what Bayley and Asuka had done earlier that evening, but yet it's still one of the better main events because of the talent level that Balor and Samoa Joe were able to bring. It very quietly goes underneath the radar, but good to see that it wasn't lost on your list.
No, actually, no, it's not. And getting to my number 3, it's the Takeover in New Orleans. I believe we went to this one. Am I correct, Steve? Okay, so it was, if y'all remember, it was Gargano versus Ciampa. Now, here's my thing. These two have had a lot of good matches, which, if it was me, this countdown would have been just solely them. But all I know is that Ciampa, you know, was fighting against his former best friend, and Gargano had become obsessed with wanting to literally get back at Ciampa every chance he got, figuring, okay, I'm better than he is, my career is better. Let's not forget, his career was on the line during this match, so he had to be the heart and soul of NXT, which he calls himself, and he had to beat his former best friend to make sure he retained. But if you remember correctly, he did everything in his power, and he actually won the match, which I was kind of surprised, but it is what it is, and I've always said you cannot judge someone based on their height. He had a lot of heart, he won the match, and as much as I love both men, I'm glad that Gargano won.
This one really had most people in their feels because of the fact that Gargano, 2 months before at a show that we actually attended live in Atlanta, lost a match for the NXT title because of Ciampa, and ended up losing his spot in NXT, so it was up to Gargano to have one shot to be able to defeat Tommaso Ciampa, understanding that his career in NXT was on the line if he was unable to get the job done, and he was able to successfully do so in a very unique way by getting Ciampa to tap out while using his leg brace as part of the submission. Ciampa even trying to get a little sneaky towards the end, trying to promote, you know, him to go back to his DIY days, with the reality being that he was intending on trying to lay out Gargano with that leg brace, but unsuccessful. Gargano gets the win and gets to continue on. Possible chance that we'll see Gargano. It'll depend on the results later tonight of NXT to find out if Gargano will be able to get into TakeOver this Saturday.
And as you can see, I'm going to give a little shout out to Loot Crate. They're the ones that created this Tommaso Ciampa figurine. If you don't have Loot Crate, I suggest for the money that you're paying, you get a bunch of stuff, and you love a bunch of stuff, and you can split it up between your family members. My husband has like Loot Crate, and he shares every month with me and my sons, or our sons, excuse me. So we're going to move into number 2. For everybody that remembers, AOP, Authors of Pain versus DIY. Now, you're sitting here saying, well, she just talked about DIY not being, a cohesive unit, and they're not together. This was before they split. They were a team. One had heart, one had the energy. They both had the passion to want to win, but you have to think you're going up against big guys. And I think they had, what do we call him, Steve? We call him General Granddaddy, but I can't remember his name ever.
Paul Ellering.
Yes, Paul Ellering was pretty much the mouthpiece for these two big brutes. If you look at it, it was for the NXT tag titles, which I believe at the time AOP had on them, and both DIY was trying to get them, and in order to have that happen, they had to climb the ladder to snag the titles. I know it was a lot of back and forth. It was a lot of knit and grit, and it was, to me, I thought it was a very good match for what it was. And with that being said, with everything and all the fight that they both had, it did not happen. AOP retained. I believe it was with the help of Paul Ellering that they retained the titles. And what you did not see, or what you probably won't remember, is that after that match, I believe Gargano was laid out, and I believe Ciampa actually had to end up doing a heel turn. So that is on my number 2 for the best matches for TakeOver. No, it's on this side.
I would counter that. I think that's probably the part that most people would remember, is the fact that the match itself was fantastic. Obviously, Ciampa and Gargano teaming up as DIY, trying to win back the tag titles. Noting for the fact this is the only takeover in which the tag team titles were the main event. But the ladder match stipulation definitely favoring DIY. But AOP able to get the victory. But what most people are going to remember is the aftermath of that particular takeover, which was, of course, Ciampa's heel turn over Gargano and spending about 10 to 15 minutes laying him out across like the areas where the ring announcers were, or where the TV announcers were at, eventually driving him off a table. Just a number of, heinous assaults, and really starting the run of the rivalry that would become Gargano and Ciampa. But the match itself kind of goes under the radar. But if you go back and watch it, it was a fantastic match with a lot of very near fall places where it appeared that DIY would get the upper hand. But not to be, and then Ciampa, of course, turns, and the rest is history. 1 to go.
So we're down to the very last one. It is the number 1 for me. I started with a women's match, and I'm going to end with the women's match. So you're thinking, what match am I talking about? Well, if you remember, it's NXT Respect, Sasha versus Bayley, which is interesting because they were against each other in this match, but now they're all good as of right now in the storylines. I loved it. I loved the fact that the women actually got to main event. I think this was the first time ever seeing any 2 women. So for them, 2 best friends, to be able to break the mold and shatter the glass ceilings, that spoke volumes to me about how the women are making an impact in wrestling. Goodness, it was a 30-minute. You have never seen women go so long. It was back and forth, pinfall after pinfall, submission after submission. You've had bank statement, you had belly to back, or back to belly, whatever her finishing move is. And all I remember is that this was a hell of a match, and what kind of broke my heart, I was pulling for Sasha the whole entire time, only to have Bayley retain. Again, 30 minutes of back and forth, and I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe this was Sasha's final match, which it told me one thing: she's going to do great things on the main roster. And she got her, I guess more or less, she got her swan song, and she ended up going to the main roster. So before I start crying, I'm going to go ahead and, it was 3-2. Bayley 3, Sasha 2. And before I start crying, I'm going to go ahead and put that on the board. So, yeah.
The infamous spot in this match, of course, being, as you noted, that this was the first ever women's main event of any WWE-based pay-per-view, NXT or main roster. And giving Sasha Banks and Bayley the level of respect, literally living in the name that the pay-per-view was called. You knew that the tone had to be set, because if this match did not live up to the hype, women may never get this opportunity again. And all it did was not only live up to the hype, it shattered any remaining glass ceiling that you had. Several great spots between the 2. Of course, the infamous spot where Sasha making young Izzy cry, but ultimately Bayley getting the job done, and Sasha getting her farewell with the flowers and everything else, as we've seen with several others along the way. As Sasha, of course, along with Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch a couple of weeks later, would make their debut, ironically, in our hometown of Atlanta. So we'd get an opportunity to attend that as well.
We did not expect that, but for us, that was great. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wind it out right now, just saying we do have an NXT pay-per-view. It is NXT Triple H, or Triple X, not Triple H. You can see where my mind is. 30. Don't forget that we do have Top Rope spoilers that we will do before the pay-per-view, so please stay tuned and watch for that. Also, that Saturday, take the time to watch the actual physical pay-per-view.